But what is the point of heaven? And I would say this: heaven makes all the difference between hope and despair. All the difference. The fear of dying is something that everyone deals with and wrestles with in some level, in some way. And the answer to the fear of dying is heaven. Heaven determines the difference between two totally different visions of life. One vision is infinite bliss. That's the vision of heaven, infinite bliss. If you don't have a belief in heaven, what are you left with? Infinite misery, infinite nothingness. Heaven, unimaginable triumph. Just incredible victory. This life is over. Marvelous things that we'll talk about both this week and in great detail next week. What's the other view? Well, unimaginable tragedy, complete loss of everything, non-existence, or suffering. It's an incredible difference between the two. It's almost remarkable that we could even talk about it as if there was any possibility of a choice. I mean, it's almost like the Patriots and the Redskins today. Seriously, who could possibly believe the Redskins are going to win? Come on. I'm sorry, Redskins fan. I apologize for that. I mean, it's true, but I apologize for rubbing it in that you're losers. But anyway, really, come on. There's like an unbelievable chasm between these two things. And so this series is really just about my opportunity to try to just make the case until you've just come to the logical, obvious conclusion that the only possible destination after this life is over is heaven, and you just want to absolutely, positively make sure that you're there. Now, people through the years have discussed, why isn't there more information about heaven? And again, we're going to spend an entire message next week looking at information about what actually happens in heaven. So you don't want to miss that because there's more there than you think. But it's true, there isn't as much information about heaven as there is about how to live on this earth. And I heard a story one time I thought kind of summed it up. They said, imagine you put a little boy at the end of a long table, and you set in front of him a bowl of spinach to eat, and then down at the other end of the table is a nice piece of chocolate cake. It's going to be kind of tough to eat the spinach if you have to look at the chocolate cake. And maybe if we knew more about heaven and just how unbelievably glorious it really is going to be, it might be difficult to sort of deal with what happens here on earth, and maybe that's why there isn't more information. But there is still plenty of information, and the Bible gives us more than enough to understand probably a lot about heaven that we don't really know and understand in the afterlife. And what I can tell you about heaven and why there's a point to it all begins with this. Heaven is the final chapter. It's the final chapter. Heaven is the final chapter in this thing called human life. Human life, our story of our lives moves through various chapters as we go from childhood into teenage years, into young adulthood, and into possibly marriage and maybe children and career and maybe even someday grandchildren, and who knows all the different twists and turns, and you never know where you may end up and how your life may go and how you may end up staying in your home area your whole life, or you may end up living somewhere else, or you may go away and you may come back. And I mean, it's just fascinating.